This webinar is sponsored by Climate Care Certified. I want to acknowledge also our platinum sponsors, Fluidra, Pentair, and our silver sponsors, Haywood. Today we're talking about, is your team effective? How to lead for results. Today's session is going to be delivered by our training manager, Mr. Peter Holland. Peter, can you just come online now, please?
I can.
Hi, Peter. So today we're talking about, or you're talking about rather, the Certificate 4 in business qualifications, a topic that's, I guess, essential to every business, and that's lead team effectiveness.
Yeah, that's correct. This unit goes across all of those Cert 4 business qual spiros.
So tell me, how does one become the person that others want to follow?
Practice.
And experience, yes, I suspect.
Definitely.
And good training.
Yep, good training, practice, also having that personality and that swagger, I suppose you could use that phrase. But the one thing is lead by example. Not just talk the talk, walk the walk as well.
So we all know that being a good leader is difficult. Finding a good leader is even more difficult. Managing a team is hard work. Sometimes being managed by a leader can be exhausting if not done the right way. Talk to us about, in your mind, how does a good team leader get a great team to perform?
Again, you've got to be that focus point where people feel safe, that they can talk to you about issues and problems, that they're able to relate to you on all different levels. If you've got a leader that separates themselves and remains aloof from the team, then they won't get that level of engagement. And it's important that that team leader sets the pace, sets by example, leads by example, but demonstrates, as I said, not only do they walk the walk, they can actually talk the talk as well.
Yeah, good response. And it's being a leader is something that can be certainly taught, but you can only become a great leader by, I guess, making mistakes, by learning, and having mentors, and just looking out for individuals that can actually, I guess, better guide you, mentor you, if you like.
That's right. And these are things that we'll be discussing further in the today's presentation.
And before I hand you over to Peter, I just want to say that for the month of June, up until the 30th of this month, anyone doing any of our business qualifications has access to 50% off. Now, it's obviously timely because it's the end of year financial. We all know that education expenses, that is expenses utilised for the purpose of improving your current role, can be looked upon as a tax deduction. And in this regard, we are extending 50% discount for any business qualification on our website until the 30th of June. I'd ask you to act quickly. There's no better time to be qualified, whether you want to do it because of your current role or you're looking to progress, you're looking for that next step. You're looking for that, I guess, the academia to become a great leader before you actually experience it and be placed in that situation. Peter, what I'm going to do now, if that's all right, is I'm going to hand over to you so you can take over the PowerPoint. I'd ask all our listeners, thank you for joining us. At the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that there's a chat box. I'm going to be monitoring that throughout. Kindly post your questions and comments that you may have. I'll certainly be sharing them from time to time. You can either send them privately, or we encourage you to send it not only to the panel, but publicly so everyone can be engaged. And again, if you've got any questions post this webinar, kindly reach out to the SPASA team, especially training, and you can see the lovely Nicole there sitting on the screen, and certainly Peter, who's our RTA manager who drives this division. So without further ado, Peter, I'm actually going to hand over to yourself, and I'll speak to you shortly. Enjoy, everyone.
Okay, so can you see my screen there, Spiros? How's that?
Good to go, Pete.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, welcome to week 8. That's been, well, that's weird. Now we've got subtitles. Hang on one second. I'm sure we can get rid of subtitles.
Subtitles could be comedic for you, Pete.
Yeah, they probably could. How do you turn them off?
Subtitle language, Pete.
Oh, mate. You got to love this. Mate, look, let's just go with it. I'm more than happy to try with subtitles. We'll see what comes up as I'm talking, because 9 times out of 10, people don't understand what I'm saying anyway. We'll see what the subtitles come up with. So today we're going to be talking about, as Spiros was alluding to, leaders of a team and what makes a team leader that. Because there are leaders, there are people that think they're leaders, and there are those that should never lead. And you could probably look in the news currently about how people are dealing with crises currently and see whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. I suppose when we talk about business, we're looking at things in a little bit different light. What are we trying to achieve when we're leading our team? What levels of communication are we expecting? What level of knowledge are we expecting from our people? And then putting it all together and making that team great. Now, today, just a little bit of a warning, we're going to go left field with this one today. So we're going to be talking about a few different things. We're going to be talking about, believe it or not, the Titanic. We'll be talking about that. There'll be a mixture of Star Wars memes, and of course, we'll be talking about my hobby, which is karate. So at the end of all of that, we're going to tie it all in about how to be an effective leader. Now, the one thing we need to realise is that teams come in all shapes and sizes. And what you see there is members of the SPASA team. There are a few missing. Our own Spiros and Nicole are missing from that one. But you'll see that we've got the chief unicorn wrangler at the top right-hand corner there, our very own Lindsay. And then we've got Luke Daly, the man mountain. It's the only mountain I know that wears glasses and has legs. Then we've got Sir Rodney. I'll call him Sir Rodney because he's probably nature's gentleman. If people do know Sir Rodney, they'll know exactly what I mean by that. And then you've got our very own David Stennett at the bottom there with a KFC bucket on his head. And for those people that know Dave, would also attest the fact that the bucket should have been lower. But what makes this team work? We're all different personalities. We're all different types. We're all different shapes. We come from all different backgrounds. So what brings it all together? Well, first of all, leadership. The one thing I will say about the SPASA team is that not only do we enjoy what we do, we love what we do. And there's the difference. If you've got a team that actually are genuinely committed with a true love for what they do and a respect for the leadership and understand that that respect will flow back, then you can achieve great things. And I've worked in a lot of places. I've worked in different team environments, and I've had some pretty bad experiences with a team leader. And I'm sure we've all had similar experiences. The one thing about a leader of a team is that they will make you feel like you are part of that team, but also it becomes similar to a family environment. So what is your idea of a great leader? And I would really like you to sit down and write in the chat box what you think the traits of a really great leader are. And when you think about leaders and leadership, we look back in history and look at the people that we've had in our history. The leaders of the past, have we learned anything from those leaders. So if you can just put down what your ideas of a leader is, and we will be talking about that leadership traits and what you believe a good leader would possess very shortly. Now, some of us may have ideas about what a leader is, and others may have completely different ideas. And whilst we see Justin Bieber and Kanye on the screen, there are people that actually follow these people because of their values, their beliefs, their belief systems, their message. And when you think about it as a team leader or a leader in a business, it is how you can put that message out there, what message you're providing these people, and how are you getting them to follow. So whilst, you know, people are probably looking at this screen going, what the hell has Justin Bieber and Kanye got to do with lead? It's about the message. And when you think about being a leader, it's about being able to provide a message and then getting the team to embrace that message and then carry on regardless. So Spiros, can we have some ideas, please, in relation to what people think about leadership qualities?
So some of the things that have come through, Peter, and it's nice to see there's a consistency of message here. So some of the things we've got coming through is honesty, strength through actions, always has time for their team, very important, integrity, being resolution-minded, transparency, inclusive, encouraging. A great leader must be personable, approachable, empathetic, and must also have the appropriate knowledge and skills. I mean, that's important, obviously, if you're seeking that sort of respect from your colleagues. Positive enhancement, they've got to be inspiring, respect, and as you can see, there's a certain consistency there of the ingredients of what makes a great leader. So keep them coming through, guys. Well done.
Yeah, they're excellent responses. And the reason why I wanted to engage on that level is I just want to share something with you. Many years ago, I worked for a private company when I first moved to Brisbane. And I had a bit of an issue of a medical nature that saw me plonked into acute care at Ipswich Hospital. And the boss turned up to visit. And I had other visitors there with me, and I thought, oh, that's lovely. The boss is coming to see me. That's really nice. And I was actually touched. Until the boss said to me, when you're coming back to work, we've got tickets for the Melbourne Grand Prix, and we want to make sure that you're there before we go. They were going on the Monday. She came to see me on the Thursday. So needless to say, I didn't last too long in that job. So the one thing about a leader is that sometimes there has to be sacrifices. And if you're putting yourself above somebody else that obviously was in need, then you're not going to get anything out of that team member. And as this person saw, you'll lose that team member. Now, here we go with our little karate enthusiast. The one thing about an effective leader and a great leader is that when you've got a great leader, you don't just want to participate, you want to succeed for them and you want to succeed with them. Now, the picture you see in front of you is a man whom I have a great deal of love and respect for, Sensei Kevin. Now, what Kevin does as a leader, especially when you're in front of him, and he sets that example, he sets the tone, and he drives you to succeed. And he then owns your success with you. He doesn't take the success from you. And he allows you to really feel what you've achieved and what you've accomplished. And what you see there is after a grading, and it was probably one of the hardest gradings I've ever done. And what Sensei did at every grading, he was always there watching his students grade. He'd be walking around, he'd be encouraging you. And this one time where you've got to stand in sumo stance, and I know everybody knows what a sumo is and how they stand down. And so you've got to sit there for 3 minutes, holding that stance, and your legs are buckling, and you feel the pain, and Sensei is looking over at you and he's encouraging you, keep with it, stay with it. That's what a leader truly is, inspiring. He's there with you. He's feeling your pain. He knows what you're going through. And he makes sure that the encouragement's still there. And so for a leader, you don't just want to succeed for them, you want to succeed with them. The one thing I take away from Sensei Kev is that nothing is impossible. As a leader, there are no limits. The one time you start setting a limit to something, you lose the message. A leader should always understand that impossible doesn't mean exactly that. Nothing is impossible. Now, the picture you see in front of you, we were at a tournament, and there are all different levels of tournament. When you go to state tournaments, you're against New South Wales. I mean, I'm currently in Queensland. So when you're up against New South Wales, it is a fairly sizable event. And this one is a local regional tournament. And it was held here in Queensland. Now, before we were to have our group fight, we were up against black belts. And Sensei walked up to us and said, remember what I kept saying to you, nothing is impossible. Don't look at their belts. Don't look at the color of their belts. Have faith in your ability. And as you can see from the medals around our neck, and what you don't see are the medals that aren't around the black belt's neck, is that we actually won. And the reason why is that our leader had faith in our ability. He communicated that faith in that ability. And we went out there, and not just for us, but for our leader. We were that proud that at the end of that, we all stood around and give Sensei a big high five and thanked him. And it made you actually want to take your medal off and hand it to him, because it made it feel like he was there fighting alongside us. And when you think about a leader and what they're supposed to do within that team environment, it really is about them fighting alongside you. Whether it's in business or whether it's in life, it doesn't matter. You want a leader to be there with you, not to be aloof from you, to be part of what you're trying to achieve, and then move forward. Now, many years ago, and there's a nice quick change of pace, karate, cricket. Two of my favourite things in life I speak about. And for those people that do know me well, would understand that every year I'm at the Big Bash here in Queensland. I love cricket. Max Walker is probably one of the most amazing public speakers I've ever heard, because he was able to place his team into business principles. And the way he spoke was truly inspiring. And what he said was this. He said, when you think about a team, think about what happens with the Australian cricket team. There are teams that are picked. There are individuals that are placed into that team. And they've got a role. They've got a job. They've got a specific job. Now, wicketkeeper is a specific job. The opening bowler is a specific job. The opening batter is a specific job. And these people are picked based on their ability to perform. And again, it's the same as business. When we're picking or choosing a team, we need to ensure that the correct people are placed in that position. And then Mr. Walker said about the captain. Now, the captain is the one that's making the on-field tactical decisions. So in a team, you probably have a senior member or somebody that will be there constantly driving that team forward. He said, but the one person that is always forgotten is the coach. Now, the coach makes the decision, makes the determination of the makeup of that team. They hire, they fire, they sack people from the team because they didn't perform. Coach makes those difficult decisions. And the one thing about the coach is that they have the ultimate say, but the ultimate respect. And when he talks about the number of coaches he's been under, the one thing that he always espoused was the respect the players had for the coach. So when it comes to leading in business, it is imperative that you have the respect of the team. And again, as we go forward, we'll get the idea of how respect is given and not demanded. Now, karate, cricket, Titanic. Wow, we're going left field with this one, aren't we? There is a saying, there was a captain on the Titanic when it sank. And the reason why that saying is out there is because it's a way people would blame the leader for failure. And when you think about it, it is probably one of the most enigmatic stories in our history. When you think about the disaster that occurred, we think about ship, hit iceberg, captain's fault. But what we don't understand is that there is a number of failings within that instant that occurred even before the ship sailed, right up to the point where it struck the iceberg. Now, the one thing, when we look at a leader, it isn't just about apportioning blame for when things go wrong. It's how a leader will actually accept when things are going right and apportion that to the team and the team's success. If things go wrong, it isn't about apportioning blame to the team. It is looking at what happened and then learning from it and making sure it doesn't happen again. So when you think about, was it the leader's fault? We need to look upon situations, look at the things that led to it. And that's why we're going to be talking about the Titanic today. What has the Titanic got to do with teams and business? That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked, because you're probably all sitting there scratching your heads. It is about how teams come together within that environment. There are all different types of team that served on that vessel, and we speak about them shortly, but we talk about not only the lookout team, not only the officers team, but we've also got the cooks, the engineers, the housekeeping. All of these people came together in reaction to one of the largest maritime disasters ever. So we look about how the teams communicated, what went right, what went wrong, and then think about that from a business perspective. When we look at things that occurred, team communication, the team cohesion, were they able to communicate their fears effectively to their leader? And then the last one is overconfidence in their product. And we talk about that shortly. Now, I'm going to ask you if you can recall any time in your life that you can remember a product or service that had grandiose claims of excellence and completely failed. So what I want you to do is in the chat box, if you can just chuck down a few of the things that you think that were failures. They could have been, good, but, didn't catch on, or completely failed. Now, I've included in that the iPod. Now, you think that's not a failure. Believe it or not, folks, the Apple iPod was one of the most complained about consumer items ever. Even though it was a successful product, it was the most complained about at one point because of that lovely wheel. Now, for those that had that device would remember, if that wheel broke, it's all over. Nothing worked. So this is where the number of complaints kicked in. So if you could in the chat box, guys, please chuck down your idea of a product or service that had some grandiose claims and failed. And the reason why is we start now with the owners of the Titanic, those that designed, so the engineers. They actually promoted the fact, and we've all heard it, that this vessel was unsinkable. And it was given that tag. And unfortunately, that tag, as we all know now, led to a really crappy movie, but it also showed that what they were espousing was completely incorrect. They had a flaw. It was the compartments that were designed to stop the flooding. It was only designed to accept encroachment into 4 compartments, and it could stay afloat. The thing is, though, when they struck the iceberg, it encroached into 5 compartments. The moment that it went into that 5th compartment, that ship was doomed. So the overconfidence in that product led to certain decisions being made on that fateful night. Okay, Spiros, let's hear some of those product fails. And there's another one there, New Coke.
Yes, thanks, Peter. I've had some that have come through the chat and some sent privately. Obviously, New Coke was something that sent Coke fanatics into a windstorm where they quickly retracted it. We've got the Sony Betamax. Anyone remember that? The Apple Newton, which was that where you kept all your data entry before Apple came on and sort of took over. And of course, Samsung Galaxy 7. If you recall, they wouldn't allow them on flights because they would potentially cause fire, and in some cases they did.
Yep.
The DeLorean Motor Company.
Yep.
Google Plus. We've got things such as low-fat ice cream. That's a good one. The Ab Master. So the list continues, and they're still coming in. The Telex machine. There are so many examples, Peter.
I love those examples. And again, the reason why is if you think about that, a company invested in, so there was all these different teams come together to form an idea, and they thought they were on a winner. And then things went horribly wrong because they forgot one important factor, and that was the consumer. So moving on, when we look at the next level of team, we look at the Titanic's officers. Now, they were led by Captain Smith, and then there was First Officer Murdoch as the two senior officers on board that vessel. Now, prior to the ship striking the iceberg, Captain Smith had retired for the evening, and he left instructions that the ship was to continue sailing at full speed, which at that time was 41 miles per hour. Now, sorry, kilometres per hour, not miles per hour. The reason why this was, and there was rumours that it was supposed to be some sort of record setting, it wasn't. It was actually standard operating procedures. Now, it was communicated to the captain that other vessels had come to a stop because of the ice and the danger. Now, the reason I bring this up is that these guys were too frightened to go against the captain. Now, the one thing about an effective leader is that he needs to take on board the advice of those people below them, because the people below them may have a different approach or a different operational knowledge that will hold them above the knowledge of the leader. An effective leader should be able to take that on board and know that this is coming from a good place. This is coming from somebody that wants us to succeed. It's nothing to do with asserting their authority or trying usurping their authority in front of anybody. It's got nothing to do with that. But in this instance, there was a chain of command, and this chain of command was followed. So straight away, the moment the people cannot report their concerns, there's an issue. Once that breaks down and a leader cannot accept either criticism or a different idea or approach, then that person fails to become an effective leader. Now, I just want to put a question to you, because we all have that intimate knowledge of what happened on the Titanic that night, and you're the leader now. You are. You've been given an idea of what's occurring around you. What decision would you have made if you were that first officer on that vessel? What would you have done, and why? Now, bear in mind, we know now what wasn't done. But as a subordinate of that leader, what could you have done differently, and why would you have done it? So if you want, please chuck in the chat. As I said, this will all come together shortly, but I just want to hear some ideas on what could have been done differently and how you would have approached the captain with your idea. The next team we've got is the lookout team. Now, you see that gentleman on there. His name was Frederick Fleet. He actually was in the lookout. Now, the sad thing about it is this gentleman was actually issued binoculars, and he could actually use them. And even in a hearing in the United States after the vessel had sunk and there was a terrible loss of life, he gave evidence that if he used the binoculars, he would have seen the iceberg earlier and communicated that to the bridge. Now, by the time they did actually see the iceberg, He had to ring on a ship-to-ship vessel, a communication device, and that was picked up by the bridge. The issue there is that the vessel is still steaming forward. So we've got an issue with communication straight away. If there's a delay in communication or an inability to communicate, the message is lost. So by the time the bridge picked up and he yelled that there was an iceberg dead ahead, the bridge gave the decision to try and move around the iceberg. I'm just seeing some of the subtitles that are coming up. I didn't say that. Okay, now the collision. So you've got a vessel that is 900 foot long, 93 foot wide, 46,500 tonnes, steaming towards an iceberg. It made the decision to try and go around it, not hit it head on. And then we saw that the iceberg penetrated along the side of the vessel and opened it up. So the faith in the design process, the owners and the unsinkable idea had gone out of the way. The actual leader, he wasn't on the bridge at the time, he was asleep. And that's not a criticism, it's just a fact. Now, clearer minds are saying if it hit the iceberg head on, may not have sank. No one's ever going to be able to say that. But I don't know, if you see something in front of you, are you going to think, I'm going to hit it and see if I survive? So the decision-making processes of the team now come into play. What could they have done differently? And why could they have done something differently? The one thing about a team is owning the decision you make and understand that sometimes you can sink, but there's other times you can succeed. The one thing that a team leader should never do is instill into the team that if you sink, there will be punishment. The one thing a team leader will do is understand that sometimes teams do sink, they do fail. But out of that, they can still be picked up and still be shown that, look, whilst this didn't work, we can do things differently. And the team members will not fear repercussions or reprisals. All right, Spiros, let's see if we've got anybody that wants to be the first officer on the bridge of the Titanic on that night.
We've got a couple of questions. The first one is, if they're on the Titanic, they need to ask questions, get feedback to get consensus before making decisions. Another one, they were ignoring everything as they believed the Titanic was unsinkable. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Very much so.
And my own comment in this space, and that is that classic errors of employee bias, groupthink and hierarchy going terribly wrong.
Yep. The one thing is, though, the officers all knew what was happening around them. As a team leader, you do know what's happening around you. What are the circumstances that are currently impacting on you? And we're seeing them currently with the COVID restrictions that are occurring. What are we doing to ensure that there's decisions that are being made that are best for the business? Are we consulting with the people that know? Are we getting the best advice? And in this instance, you had people that knew that there was something that should be done, but then were too afraid to communicate that. And as a leader, that makes it extremely difficult to lead a team that's too scared to actually tell you that you're doing something wrong. You should never be afraid to do that. If you don't agree with something, then you should feel like you can talk to the leader and say, this is not right, without the fear of repercussions. So now that we've spoken about Max Walker, karate, and the Titanic, let's put it all now together. We've used different analogies, and as I said, we're going to go way out of left field. And the difference with putting it in messages like that is we can all relate to these things. We can relate to team sports, we can relate to incidents that occurred in history, and look at how the leaders have either excelled or failed. But the one thing a leader should always be able to do is not only delegate the authority to somebody, but have faith in that delegation. When Captain Smith walked off the bridge, he delegated authority of that vessel to the first officer. And yet the first officer, who knew that they should not be steaming full steam ahead in that sheet of ice field, he was too afraid, too afraid. So a leader, you need to have faith in the delegation you're placing the people below them. Have faith that they will do what you want. And as I provided with Sensei Kev, is that you provide them the encouragement, you provide them the feedback, provide them the knowledge, but also provide them the faith that you're with them every step of the way. Now, believe it or not, team members need recognition. Now, the one thing I did hear this from an employer many years ago, is I recognise my team by paying them every fortnight. Well, that's fantastic, very true, yes. But the thing is though, and I used an analogy with Sensei Kev, is that when he's providing feedback, it is how you can do things better and then what he's going to do to help you get there. Recognising that there's going to be things that go wrong, but I'm going to help you improve and better yourself. And then when you get there, recognise that success. And it's important that people engage with that. Tell people that they're doing a good job. You might have your own reward system. One of the local businesses that I know gives their bloody best worker of the month a pizza. Except don't do it from Domino's. I had a dodgy one on the weekend, but that's another story. Provide recognition, provide feedback. When things are going right, tell them. When things are going wrong, tell them. But do so with encouragement and not belittling a team member. We need to recognise, as being an effective leader, that sometimes team members will miss that goal. They've tried hard. They've done their best. What could have been done better? The one thing about being an effective leader is understand that, we're not going to hit our goals every time, but we look at what the team did to try and get there. Is there things we could have done different? You've put the best members into that team. You've led that team effectively, and yet they've not hit that target. Just remember that it may not be anyone's fault. As we see from COVID, there are external factors that are impacting on everything. Regardless of what the team's doing, they may be doing everything right. Just remember that it's not their fault, that sometimes they do not hit that target. Promote new ideas. The boss had a great idea because the team gave it to him. Don't be that leader. Promote the new ideas. Have people come forward with their thoughts, with their strategies, with their concepts, and reward them. The one thing about saying, man, that's a great idea, that's the reward. Instead of going, nah, and then walking off. We need to have a little bit of humanity in the way we deal with people. And the one thing you can see even nowadays, when we talk about a leader and how they're approaching their employees, it is how we're able to engage them to get them to feel comfortable enough to go, I think we can do something differently. So promote those new ideas. You might have team meetings where you sit down and actually get people to talk about ideas, talk about strategies, and that's great because they should be able to, in an open environment, talk and communicate openly. The one thing we need to do is, as an effective leader, is get them to actively participate. Now, there may be team members that may not be performing, and this is another side of the coin when we talk about performance management, and that is included in our lovely little Cert 4s, little plug there. When we talk about performance management, it's about performance issues. When we talk about team responsibility, it is telling people that they have a role. This is their area of responsibility, and then actively participate in that, ensuring that you've got communication processes in place where all the team members are kept informed. The one thing I love about SPASA and working with SPASA is that we are told everything. Everything is transparent because there shouldn't be any secrets. So we understand what's happening in the marketplace. We understand what's happening with management and the decisions that are being made. We're kept informed. Now, even though I may not have a lot of input into other areas of strategy or decision making, we're still told. So we've got that sense of belonging. So as an effective leader, it is telling people what's going on, and this is why. It may not affect you, but this is why we're telling you. We're making you part of that process. I did speak about this before about not hitting the mark, and not all teams win. Now, it is a sad reality. I mean, we see it every time we watch a sports game. There might be like the Newcastle Knights when they had the 14-all draw. I won't talk about that. That was very upsetting. How does anybody miss 6 field goals? Like, really? But anyway, I get off topic. Not all teams will win. Again, it has nothing to do with punishment. It's about recognising what went wrong. Now, as an effective leader, if things do go wrong, the team should not then be fearing you. If you are an effective leader, they're not going to fear. They're going to come to you and say, look, this is what went wrong. This is what I think we can do. And that is the sign of an effective leader. Yes, they've not won, but they've already come back and said, we can do this better. And this is how I know things went wrong here. Lead by example. I love this picture because it goes into what we're talking about. You don't have to talk the talk. You've got to walk the walk. And in this instance, quack the quack, I suppose, if we can use that. Lead by example. The one thing about a leader is that you can always depend on them setting that example. If they're going to be there working hard, the team that is, then the leader's going to be there working with them just as hard. An effective, respected leader will not just say, I want this done, then get up and walk out. Being part of that team and owning that, leading by example, and having that example set and followed. And again, using that analogy in relation to my mate Sensei Kev, is that he did lead by example. This man was always there. If we were doing sumo stance, he was there doing sumo stance with us. If we were doing katas up and down the dojo, he was doing them up and down with us. He set that example. He led by example. And when we're sitting there trying to catch our breath, getting ready to do the next, he was there as well. Led by example. And then in the end, we wanted to be like him. We wanted because he led by example. The one thing, and I do love this saying, successful leaders surround themselves with successful people. And that is very true. And the reason why I love this saying is that successful people will share the success with those around them. And that's why they become successful people. They don't take the gratitude, they don't take the success all for themselves. They recognize the people that are around them. And so they are successful people. It's not just about having the best people in the job, it is making them the best. That is designing that person to and encouraging them to commit to improvement. Set that example and allow them to follow that example. And then in that group, there will be successful people. Now, folks, that ends our lovely little journey into Max Walker, karate, Titanic, and now moving into the different areas of effective leadership. Now, we've had a little bit of a journey. We've gone here, there, and everywhere, and we've all brought it back together into that final analogy of what would make an effective leader. Really like to thank you for joining me today. It's been a bit of a journey. We've gone up, down, back, sideways, but in the end, we've demonstrated what would make the traits of an effective leader. Folks, thank you so much. If you've got any questions, please feel free. I'm more than happy to answer anything you may have.
Well, thank you, Peter. It was really quite informative on subject matter that sometimes we're not always exposed to. So thank you for sharing that. I just want to share with everybody that post this webinar, you're going to receive a survey. It is important for you to please take 1 minute. That's all it takes to fill it out. It helps us improve our model. We want to lead from the front, and we can't do it without you. And some of the decisions we make is based on your feedback. So please invest a minute of your time in filling out the survey. You will get it automatically. The other thing I wanted to say is that please do not forget that all our business qualifications, they're nationally accredited across Australia, for the month of June are 50% off. If you've got any questions, please either call Peter, Nicole, myself, or any of the SPASA team, and we'll walk you through what that looks like. We have payment schedules in place that are automatic, that can be paid over a period of time. Thank you again for joining us. Much appreciated. And next week, you'll be joining me talking about a very interesting topic, but you're going to have to actually tune in to see what that looks like. So please register.
I've already put it up.
Thank you, Peter, for
Yeah,
letting
I've got ahead of you, mate.
So as you can see, this is my certificate. You'll also be getting one post this webinar. It's acknowledgement that you've participated in something, and it goes towards your SPASA CPD points. And if you're members, if you get enough of these, you can have your business accredited. It's very, very valuable. It's accreditation. It's promotional, one more badge of honour that you can wear. Please, please join us next week, myself, to talk about refining small business. It's going to be jam-packed with information, and we're really going to start crunching some numbers as well. So leaders, employees, tune in and have a look at what it looks like when we sell things and the impact of discounting and small business. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, guys. Really enjoyed it. See you next time.